everyone, Amer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I am reviewing Season 7, Episode 3, which is called The Deal. This one starts with Jim pulling out the good old blue convertible, it's been a while, and getting a package from a bank teller. The mission: the syndicate, through their operative Larson and his delivery man Rogan, are supporting General Oliver Hammond's takeover of the island of Camagua. He's planning to stage a military coup. And Rogan is delivering a key to a safety deposit box with $5 million in it for the revolution. There's no apartment scene here. We head straight to the IMF setting up a port and boat with Camagüan identification, and we learn that Willie has been sent to Rogan's yacht undercover to try and find the key. Willie checks in from the engine room to cover up the sound of his voice and tells Jim that he hasn't found anything. He says he's preparing to search the main cabin while Rogan and the others are on the main deck. Rogan's girlfriend, Marcy Carpenter, gives him a birthday gift of a radio, which by some happenstance picks up Willie's next transmission to the IMF. And Rogan's muscle man Chalmers holds Willie at gunpoint, which Jim and Barney overhear. Willie is able to outmaneuver Chalmers and the others and dives into the ocean, but is shot in the shoulder. Willie doesn't surface for a while, and so Rogan's crew figure he's dead, but we do see him after a few seconds trying to stay afloat. Jim immediately orders the IMF ship to pull out in pursuit of the yacht. Hammond is waiting impatiently for Rogan's covert arrival, and in the meantime, the IMF ship reaches the yacht. Rogan, of course, welcomes them aboard, as he figures they are sent by Hammond. But Navy officer Barney tells Rogan and the others that they're under arrest, putting Rogan's crew in the ship's brig, finding no sign of Willie, who struggles to stay afloat and find a way towards land. A nearby fisherman gets angry that the IMF ship has torn up his nets and says he'll lodge a complaint. Rogan's crew is taken to the IMF's Camagüan base and told that Hammond has been arrested for treason and they are to be held as his co-conspirators. They'll be put on trial shortly, and they're put into bug jail cells. Marcy finds she has company in the form of Mimi, who says that she's being held because she was Hammond's friend. Marcy claims that she knows nothing of importance, and Mimi says that they won't believe her, causing her to worry. The key is not found in any of the crew's possessions, so the IMF continues to search the boat with metal detectors, but still find nothing. Rogan's people see soldiers preparing a firing squad area, but Rogan's not worried. He is sure that they are after the money and wouldn't risk shooting them to lose the information on how to get at it. Willie finally washes up to a coast and collapses from exhaustion, despite being accosted at gunpoint by a Camagüan soldier. Interrogator Jim first comes for Chalmers, who is brought into a room and suddenly sees himself. It's an IMF operative wearing a mask, of course, who is taken out in the courtyard and executed as the others watch. Rogan tells Arnie to stay strong, not give up any information. Marcy starts crying. Mimi is taken for interrogation next, and the IMF plays a tape of her yelling and crying from a beating. She returns to the cell after adjusting her makeup accordingly, and Barney follows her in, saying that he'll try to help her tomorrow, to the surprise of both women. Hammond orders a search for the yacht as he frets over not getting his prize. Calls Larson about the situation, who says he'll head for Camagua as soon as he can. Jim questions Arnie about Willie, who called himself Briscoe, and he claims that Willie fell overboard. Actually, Willie is in a Camagüan hospital being questioned by Hammond. Willie claims that Rogan shot him and said he was going to Trinidad. Marcy overhears Mimi talking to Barney again later and realizes that she has an escape plan. Larson arrives and tells Hammond that the man in the hospital isn't Briscoe. Willie says that he was hired by Rogan and given Briscoe's papers, and he didn't ask any questions. He needed the money. And despite Rogan saying he was going to Trinidad, it looked like he was on a course back towards Miami, enlarging the area to be searched. The trial of Rogan and his friends continues, with Jim presenting a confession from the allegedly recently deceased Hammond and declaring the three guilty, with the two men scheduled for execution and Marcy being sent to jail. Marcy is able to tell Rogan quickly about Mimi's escape plan before they go back to their cells. Hammond's recon planes are spotted by the IMF, so Jim tells the IMF operatives to be ready to move if necessary. Arnie is the next to be executed, and Rogan says he's ready to make a deal. Turns out Arnie was actually just shot with short-term tranquilizers and is put in the brig with Chalmers. Rogan signs a confession and Jim demands the key as part of the deal, but Rogan says he doesn't have it. Jim leaves, and Rogan tells Barney that they can work together and split the $5 million. Or Rogan says he could tell Jim about the escape that he's arranging with Mimi. Barney agrees to help him out. Hammond's people find Rogan's yacht located at an abandoned U.S. base in the corner of Camagua. Hammond's man tells Willie that he'll be hanged for lying to them, but fortunately even one-handed Willie is able to overpower him and take his uniform, choking the room guard out as well. Barney lets Mimi, Marcy, and Rogan out of their cells. They head through a hidden hatch and out into the courtyard. Mimi and Marcy head to a truck where Marcy is held by an IMF operative and taken down to the brig with Rogan's buddies, while Rogan and Barney go back to the yacht. Willie manages to get a radio, from where he sends a message to Jim about Hammond's impending arrival. Jim says they'll take 10 minutes, no more, and then they'll leave. On the yacht, Rogan shows Barney that the plastic, not metal, key was inside the pot of a plant, which he breaks and gets the key out. He says he'll share the money with Barney if he gets him out of the situation with Jim, and Barney agrees, slapping him with a knockout ring and taking the key. When he wakes up a few minutes later, again short-term tranquilizer, Rogan glumly watches the IMF sail away as Hammond and Larson show up with soldiers, and the three of them realize the IMF has truly done a number on them. The IMF pick Willie up, and back home they go. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of D. When I watched it this time, I was reminded very much of the recent episode towards the end of season 6, which was called Double Dead. I reviewed that one not very long ago. They're very, very similar in that they have Willie subplots. Willie kind of gets another day in the limelight here, in a sense, just like he did in Double Dead. I gave Double Dead a grade of D+, mostly on the strength of the Willie subplot. And I thought about it and I said, okay, which episode do I prefer? Even though I don't really like either of them a lot, I would give Double Dead the slight edge here in terms of overall episode quality. So if that one gets a D+, I think this one has to get a D. And I'll go into that a little bit more. First of all, just to wrap up and put a bow on the idea regarding the Willie subplots. If you recall back in Double Dead, Willie had that subplot where he was captured trying to get money out of the safe, and then he was basically given truth serum to try and get information to the bad guys. Here, it's sort of a similar situation. He's kind of, he goes ahead and he's trying to, do the job that needs to be done. He gets found out and he's kind of put into trouble. In Double Dead, we had the incidental character of Peño, which was a really, really nice touch. And I mentioned in Double Dead that was really what gave the episode the grade that it did. Otherwise, it would have been a complete F. And here, we don't have that, although we do see Willie kind of shine in a couple of other ways. Let's start with the good. Again, just to continue to put a bow on that. With Willie's injury and disappearance early in the episode, this one does have some suspense. He's separated from the rest of the team. It's a nice touch with Willie, the work that he does once he is captured and wakes up in that hospital. I really like the way that they show that Willie's not just, a musclehead or anything like that of the team. He actually does a good job as an agent. He's questioned about not actually being Frank Briscoe because Larson says this is not the man. And he's able to make up a story, a plausible story about that. I like that. That was a really nice touch. When he says, they needed somebody to be, a hand on the boat, and this guy had papers, so I didn't ask any questions. Really liked that. That was a nice touch. And also, Willie had the presence of mind to tell a story to General Hammond and his people. Well, he said he was going to Trinidad, but but it really looked like he was going back towards Miami. That's going to send the search teams, because obviously Hammond is going to go search for the boat. It's going to send them in two different directions. And interestingly, if you look on a map, the way that they had it, obviously the island of Camagua is, completely fictitious. But from the map, I can see that, Miami would have been towards the northwest, Trinidad would have been way towards the southeast, and where the base that the IMF's yacht actually is towards the northeast. So Willie is very, very intelligently telling them to go in two opposite directions that will completely take them away from where the IMF and the yacht actually are. Really, really nice. I did like that. That was fantastic. And obviously it was nice. It wouldn't be Willie if, again, he wasn't able to show off his strength, just as he did in Double Dead. Here he's able to overpower Hammond's guy, and also, the guard to the door, and find a way to, reconnect with Jim and the rest of the IMF. Really, really, really liked that. That was great. The only other good thing I would say about this episode, other than the usual things, that are basic to any episode, there's decent teamwork here. There's only 4 IMF members, so of course there has to be a good amount of teamwork. And it is an earned win overall for the team. I liked Lana Wood as Marcy Carpenter. I thought that she was great and did make the episode kind of worthwhile. I'll have more to say when it comes to the other guest stars. I also liked the fact that the IMF, or the writers, I should say, not the IMF, were able to keep a little bit of suspense towards the end. Like, why is the IMF having so much trouble getting this key? Well, they're looking for an honest-to-goodness metal key, and it's actually a plastic key that they're looking for, which obviously can't be detected through any normal means. So, the actual climax, the solution to the mission comes at the end, and that's fine. Normally, I don't like it when we have episodes like this, where, I've commented about this before, where the IMF goes through a whole sequence of things over 40 or 45 television minutes. And then right at the end of the episode, what they're looking for, the MacGuffin or the information that they're looking for appears, and they just basically say, I'll take that. That will happen, like literally, I'm not joking, in some episodes that are coming up this season. Here it's not so bad, because the process that the IMF has taken the antagonists, the marks, through, has been logical in terms of getting to that goal, right? They send Willie, go find the key. Well, I can't find the key. Okay, let's get the yacht and we'll, basically confiscate it so that they can search it. They do a very thorough search. They get the people on the yacht to give up all of their possessions. They still don't find the key. It makes sense and it's cogent, and I don't mind that sort of kind of yoink ending where the IMF just wins out of nowhere, because this isn't out of nowhere. There's been some foundation laid for it. Let's go to some things that are weird. First of all, there is a problem in my mind about the idea that the IMF uses an abandoned U.S. base in a corner of Camagua. And that information, we don't get that until the very end of the episode, where Hammond and his guys actually locate the yacht. Something about that kind of bothers me. I guess it does kind of make sense in a way to be able to say, okay, that's how it's pretty easy. They can have a building that looks like it belongs on Camagua. It's labeled, Republic of Camagua and that sort of thing. But you know what? I'm just thinking about it. That carries what I feel is kind of an undue level of risk. Couldn't they duplicate that setup on another island to further avoid any kind of detection and concern? I don't get that. I definitely got the impression that that was not the case. Nothing is said about it. We really don't have an apartment scene that explains anything here, although once Willie's little saga begins, Mimi, Jim, and Barney do kind of get together, and they do have kind of an impromptu session that explains a few things, but they don't explain anything about the fact that they're actually on the island of Camagua. Something about that really bothered me, and that just kind of it almost seems like we had things that were cut from this episode, like not having an apartment scene and not being told certain information, basic information, like they actually are on the island of Camagua. Just that kind of took me out of the story a little bit, because I'm like, yeah, that's a detail that I would have liked to have had. Moving on to things that were just not good. Frankly, I would say that this script is not very good. It's not horrible, it's not terrible, but I wouldn't say that there's anything fantastic about it. I don't know. I don't know anything about the cause or effect here, but I just feel like there are some really lackluster performances by the guest stars in this episode. There's just a real vibe of mediocrity throughout this episode. I can't really put my finger on it. I thought about it and I said, where is that coming from? Where is the lack of oomph coming from? Or where would it normally be that it's not there? I did give this a little bit of thought, and I feel that some of the reasons for the overall mediocrity of the episode have to do with, again, the way it's structured and the way things work out with the antagonists. The antagonists, there are multiple antagonists. And we've seen episodes where that happens before, where, there's multiple quote-unquote bad guys that the IMF is going after. Here the main target is Rogan, but, he really doesn't do or threaten anything that is really bad, quote-unquote. He's just taking a boat, his own yacht, to Camagua to deliver a key. He's not doing anything threatening. He's not he's not directly threatening to take over a country or whatever. He's not really he doesn't really seem like much of a threat or a menace or anything like that, right? So that is a bit problematic. There's Larson, who we only see very, very briefly, and then there's Hammond, who is the real target that they want to prevent from taking over the country of Camagua. But again, he's kind of very, very low key and doesn't really seem to be much of a threat. The only risk to the mission is the time factor, that Hammond's army will get to the yacht before the IMF is able to get and find the key, and they're going to prevent the IMF from completing the mission just because of their presence. They might find it first. That's a big problem. Not to mention that it's so easy for the IMF to get control of Rogan and the boat and basically tilt the entire playing field, in a sense, to their needs, so that the time factor is really the only issue for them. I think that's something that we've just seen a lot of times. It contributes to the mediocrity, certainly, that we have such a kind of nebulosity, I guess is the best way for me to say it, to the whole mission itself. Even though we have Lloyd Bochner as General Hammond, who's usually a great on-screen presence. We've seen him a few times before on this show. And usually he's one of those actors, kind of like Lawrence Dane, who's often able to just convey a lot of information just from the way he carries himself and his face and his mannerisms. But it just doesn't happen here. Maybe it's just because he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of time. Robert Webber, I know very little about him. as Rogan. He's done a fair bit of acting as a character actor, but somehow, again, maybe he doesn't strike me as the type of actor that I would normally say, maybe just isn't a great fit for this show, but maybe that's just what it is. Maybe he's just not a great fit for this show and for a script like this. Everything he does and everything that happens with his crew, other than Lana Wood as Marcy, who I thought was quite good, it just doesn't come across convincingly. I think some of it has to do with the way Rogan keeps trying to, tell all the people, hey, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. They're not going to hurt us. And then it just keeps happening that, his people, his two other guys get executed, or at least it seems that way. And so I just feel like he is lame and unengaging. I would call him a schmuck, but the IMF does a really convincing number on him and on the other people. So I don't know if it's too fair to call him a schmuck, but that just did nothing for me. He just does nothing for me as an antagonist. And overall, there's just this feeling of mediocrity and just lacklusterness, if that is a word, with regards to this episode. And just based on that, I can't give this a really good grade. Speaking of the script, I also noticed that there's one point in the episode where there's some fishermen who complain that the IMF vessel is cutting up their nets, and the guy's like, I'm going to go make a complaint about it. And that goes absolutely nowhere. That's another reason why I think that something was cut. Even if there was like another 30-second scene where that fisherman went back to port and he complained to some soldier that, I went out there and I saw, that there was this boat and there was this yacht. Well, what does the yacht look like? Oh, well, it was this color and it had this on it. And then that soldier would call Hammond and tell him, hey, General, I found the yacht. Even that would have made some sense. But that just goes absolutely nowhere. And I'm just wondering, what the heck else am I missing in this episode that is overall mediocre and lackluster? I really don't know what else to say there. Couple final notes that I made when I was watching the opening scene where Jim gets his instructions. Jim asks the bank teller to get his instructions. Can they change a $1,000 bill? That made me go and do some research. Apparently, American $1,000 bills were discontinued in 1946. They were still in circulation until 1969. This episode was filmed in 1972, a few years later, so they wouldn't have completely disappeared, but certainly they were not common, right? They were almost at the point that $2 bills are now. You can still find them if you really look for them, I guess, but they're very, very rare. So I kind of found it odd that Jim has one. I did confirm, though, that $1,000 bills and even $10,000 bills, if you actually do still have them in the United States, are still considered legal tender. Apparently, fun fact, if you want to call it that, any bill issued after 1861 is considered legal tender, no matter what the denomination. So there you go. Just kind of a fun fact. The other fun fact that I saw, it was posted on the Facebook page about Arlene Anderson, the actress who shows up here again as the actual bank teller. We saw her a few episodes ago, right at the end of season 6 in Trapped. She was the older lady who found Jim after Jim had gotten hurt and had amnesia. And I looked her up, and somebody mentioned that she's been in a lot of episodes. And it turns out that I actually think that she is the winner of being in the most Mission Impossible episodes. I looked it up. She is in 12 episodes. 2 still to come. Very, very minor parts where she maybe has 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, but she's still there and she still is credited. The people, if you had asked me before I looked that up, who were the people who had been in the most episodes of Mission Impossible? My answer to you would have been Jack Donner. Jack Donner is credited with being in 11 episodes in all. Now, there's an asterisk to that one. One of those credits is for, well, actually, I should say it like this. 3 of those credits are for The Falcon, a 3-parter. And he wasn't in part 1 of that episode. So technically he wasn't there, although technically he does get credited. So really he was only in, physically in 10 episodes. Although you could argue in the first part of The Falcon that his picture was shown when Paris is kind of doing some card tricks. So, again, there's an asterisk there. Also, Donner was in the 2-part episode, The Bunker. So, again, it depends on how you're counting episodes, right? But even still, Arlene Anderson has got him beat by 1, even if you count each of those multi-parters individually. Just a note, Sid Haig, also a prolific presence on this show. He comes in a 3rd. I'm pretty sure he's 3rd. I'll have to look back and I'll have to see if there might be any others who have, credits in 10 plus episodes. Sid Haig actually has 9 episodes to his credit. One of those was a 2-parter in The Slave. So again, there's a bit of an asterisk to that. But in terms of people who were on this show a lot, I think Arlene Anderson manages to win. And like I said, she's still got 2 to go in season 7. Just an interesting note. If anybody has any other information about people who have been in 10 or close to 10 episodes, that might be interesting. That might be one of those things that I do once I'm through all of the reviews and we kind of do some best ofs or some top 10s, something like that. And I am very, very much looking forward to that as we wind down season 7 and get to the revival. I'm pumped about getting to the revival. I really am. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here. Thank you guys as always for watching. Always much appreciated. Please like this review video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments. And I will see you next time.